Welcome to Ashley Ridge Church. We believe that life is better together, and that includes you. So here's everything you need to know to get connected to Ashley Ridge in 90 seconds. Are you ready? First, just show up. Looks like you've got that one covered. Everyone is so excited that you are here right now. Yes, you. We've crafted environments specifically designed for every age and stage, so your entire family can engage faith on their level. Second, download our Ashley Ridge Church app. It's a free download from your app store, and it's the best way to take us with you wherever you go. You can use the app to watch our live stream, take sermon notes, give right from your smartphone, and so much more. If you're having trouble, you can hand your phone to a middle schooler near you now. I'll wait. Hey, thanks, kid. Third, please fill out a Connect card. They're everywhere, including, you guessed it, the app. We promise we won't call you during breakfast or spam you all the time, so you can give us your information and feel safe. Use the Connect card to sign up for the monthly email update, let us know the next steps you are interested in, and share your prayer requests and concerns with our staff and prayer team. Most importantly, come join us at one of our monthly Next gatherings. Next takes place on the third Sunday of every month at 9 a.m. at our worship location, and childcare is provided. At Next, you'll have an opportunity to learn more about all the ways you and your family can connect. Next is also the perfect spot to meet some of the staff and leadership team and ask whatever specific questions you may have. At Ashley Ridge Church, we want you to have a place to belong before you believe. You don't have to have everything figured out yet to jump in and be part of the family. Plug into one of our volunteer teams, grow relationally in a small group, serve others on our food truck, or whatever you're passionate about. We have a place for you to live it out at Ashley Ridge Church. Life really is better together, and we can't wait to connect with you.
Well, good morning, y'all. Welcome to Ashley Ridge. We're so glad you're here today. You want to stand? We're going to sing together this morning. I'm James. This is Amy. And we serve a God who does great things. So let's sing about it this morning. Here we go. Worship the King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You've been faithful. You've been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things. And I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh, God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh, Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh, God, you have done great things. And hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. We sing this morning, church, with one voice. Oh, hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh, God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things. Amen. Y'all can be seated this morning. Well, welcome to Ashley Ridge. What a great way to start our morning, start our week off together, just reminding us of the simple truth that God does great things and He wants to do great things in you and through you today and every day. So we're so glad you're here this morning. I'm James. I'm the worship and creative director here. This is Amy and the rest of the team, and we're just glad that you're here. If you're a first-time guest this morning, welcome. On your way in, hopefully everybody got a welcome home card. That gives you just kind of the cliff notes about our church and the ways you can get connected with us throughout the week, whether that's serving on the Expanding the Table food truck or jumping in a small group, or maybe you have a prayer request that you'd like our staff to pray about or praise, you can write those all on that card. It's your one-stop shop. Also, you can fill that card out in the app today. We did want to give you some updates. You remember Hurricane Dorian, and a while ago we sent out an email and we asked you guys to respond because we were going to be helping a family who has come here from the Bahamas because their house was destroyed, and so they're actually living here locally in our area, and you guys responded overwhelmingly. We took a bunch of stuff down there on Friday, and we just wanted to the news did a story about this family. We wanted you to see it. So all you have to do is text the keyword Dorian to this number, 62488. Text Dorian to 62488. Cell service isn't great in here, but send that. And then we're just going to send you a link to the article so you can read it and see where all the stuff you donated went. And this family is just really getting connected, finding jobs. And they came here with nothing but the clothes on their back. So thank you for all that you are doing to support them and all of our relief efforts all across the board. When the church comes together, there's really nothing like it and nothing that can stop it. So thank you for doing that. Also, Forest Summerville is still rocking and rolling. If you love a Forest Summerville shirt, if you don't have one yet, stop by the hub in the lobby on your way out, and we will get your size and get you a shirt next week. And there's just one more thing, I think, and wow. Hate it when that happens. Do you guys ever feel like you kind of just waiting on something and you're waiting for some updates and they don't come? Well, if you're not signed up for the monthly update, this is what your life is like. So are you getting the monthly update? See, we don't use Windows computers here. Come on. But if you're not getting the monthly update, this is what your life might be like. So make sure on your Connect card there, your Welcome Home card, you can check that you want to receive the monthly update, or just put your email address on there. That is going out next week. And it's just got all the stuff you need to know about what's happening in the month of October. And we'll also post that on our social media and inside the Ashley Ridge app. But one of the cool things you can do is go to the Fall Festival, which is coming up in a few weeks, and there'll be more on that in the update, and we'll talk more about that next week as well. But we're having a festival out at the Bennett Farm, so that's going to be a great time. But make sure you don't do this, and make sure you're signed up so that you know what's going on. So we're glad you're here today. We're going to sing a couple more songs together this morning, and then Pastor Jen's going to come, and we're going to wrap up the Money Talk series. And I'm just excited about what God's going to do today. Would you join me in prayer this morning as we continue in worship? Father, thank you. Thank you that you're bigger than any storm. Thank you that you love us. Thank you for meeting us in this place. God, we give this time to you. We pray that you would speak to us in a way that is unmistakable this morning, through our worship, through our singing, through the reading of your word, through every element of the service, Father. Would you change us? Would you send us out on mission, on purpose, so that Summerville might know that there's a God who's for them? Thank you for meeting us in this place. We love you. In Jesus' name, y'all stand. We're going to continue to sing this morning. Together, strangers, neighbors, our blood is one. Children, generations of every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth: God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh. is in his blood. Come on, we sing. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Swing wide, all you heavens. Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All the children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All these children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All these children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Oh, 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 swing wide, all you heavens. Let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All these children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come.
Let the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my. Sing it out. You are good, 'cause you are good. You're good. Oh, 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 let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is mine. Sing that again. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. 'Cause you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, and you are good. You're good. Oh, yes, you are good. You're good. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let
You can believe
me
this.
down. You're never gonna let me
He is
down.
always there, right with you.
You're never gonna
Let's proclaim that.
me down. You're never gonna let me down.
Oh, I know.
You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, you are good. You're good. Oh, yes, you are good. You're good. Oh, you never let me down. You're never gonna let me down. He's always there. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. Oh, I believe it. You're never gonna let me down. You are good. You're good. Oh, 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 God, we thank you that we can stand and sing that no matter what, that you are good, that you know that we can trust you, that you know our name, and that no matter the outcome, that you are good, and you love us with your whole everything. God, and we thank you. So God, right now, I pray that you would move in our hearts the message that we're about to hear, God, that you would speak those words so that through the week that we can remember it and be encouraged. God, that you're good. that you are great and you are mighty. And we thank you for being those things. In your name, amen. You guys can be seated.
Hello, it's me, your money. Let's talk, shall we? Ooh, look, your package came today. I can't wait to find out what we ordered. I'm sure you can't either. Look what I found. Remember this? A penny saved is a penny earned. Hello? Anybody in there? Echoey. Just look at them all. We're rich. I don't like the word hoarder. I prefer the term saving visionary. Who needs a 401k when this buried treasure could be worth something one day? And this. Yes, this. Worth every penny.
Well, good morning. Just checking on y'all. So for 3 weeks now, we have been talking about money, and we have been talking about what money says when money talks, but there has been a verse that has been a guiding principle, a verse I told you that I'd love for us to be able to memorize. And so whether this is your first week here or you've been here for all of them, here it is again. And I just wanted you to grab hold of it. This is the last week of this series. I want to talk about this. I want this to sink deep into who we are. And it goes like this. It's from Ecclesiastes 4:6, wisdom literature from the scriptures, and it says, better is one handful with tranquility, right? Better is one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better is one handful with tranquility. When is the last time someone described you as tranquil? I'm going to give you a minute. Y'all getting there in your mind? It might take more than a minute. If you are me, it's going to take a lot longer than a minute because I am fairly certain, in fact, I am filled with certitude that I have never in my life been described as tranquil. Okay, this is the moment that you're all shocked and you're amazed. You're like, what? How bad is it? Right? We really felt like she was so calm all this time. No, never in my life have I been described as tranquil. Chill is not a word that shows up in any of the personality tests or descriptors that I've ever taken. I get personality things, and it always says words like high-strung, loud. See, now you're responding. Now you're like, yes, okay, now we're with her. You know, in the middle of everything, busy, active, all of these kinds of things. But the word tranquil is not native to my personality type, and I'm guessing it's not native to some of yours either. Now, here's the thing. Some of you are, and I really love this. In fact, I'm very attracted to people who bear these qualities. I think a lot of us are. We find and flock to people who are calm, which is probably the last thing y'all want, but we find people who do emanate that sense of, I don't need to be in the middle of every conversation, and I don't always have to have something to say, and I don't take everything so seriously, but you have maybe a little bit more of a chill, laid back personality. So I do know that we fall across the spectrum with that. But when I hear that word tranquility, and the reason we keep coming back to this verse of what does it look like to have less instead of more? What does it look like to trade worry for wisdom and to trade management for margin is because tranquility, as it's being talked about here, isn't about a personality type. It's about a level of trust, and it's about a level of security that is found in a very specific place. And the reason that this is such an important thing for us to talk about, and we're only going to be able to scratch the surface of some of this here as we come to the end of this series is that we are currently, you don't need me to tell you this, but we are currently living in a culture and in a time where anxiety levels are skyrocketing. You know that to be true, don't you? We read and we hear the studies that anxiety in our kids is on the rise. I've told y'all before at different points that 14 is the new 24, and then 28 is the new 18. And it's because we've got kids being exposed in part because of the internet, but just the way our world is connected. They're being exposed to bigger and bigger things earlier and earlier in life. And what's happening is it is breeding a level of anxiety in our kids at rates we haven't seen before in history. We know this to be true. We know that we've got anxious teenagers, but we also know that the levels of anxiety in adults is climbing, and it's climbing, and it's climbing. And I don't think it's a stretch as I look out at all of you and all of us today to say that to some degree there is anxiety that lives in parts of your life. And some of you may be in lots of areas of your life. And as we do walk down this road a little bit today, I do want to be very careful from the outset to say that there are some very serious anxiety disorders that are out there, and anxiety that is not just born of circumstance, but that also has a lot of mental implications and medical implications, and we're learning more and more about that, and we're just starting to get better, especially in the church, talking about mental illnesses and how we see those things differently. And so I want to be careful this morning as I'm talking to delineate for you and make sure you understand that there are pieces of anxiety that are well beyond the average normal anxiety and the rising anxieties that all of us feel, and those need to be handled in different kinds of ways, okay? And if that's you, I would love to help you connect to somebody and to pursue that path to health, okay? But on the other side of a more general anxiety area is what we understand is that we as a whole are becoming more anxious people. And as I looked into this and as I did some research and some studying around this idea, here is one of the things that I think is incredibly fascinating. I think a lot of times we associate anxiety with concern or worry, maybe, over the things that we don't have. But in fact, anxiety is actually more prevalent and not only happens at higher rates, but also happens at higher levels in wealthier economies. Okay, just think about that for a minute. What studies are showing us is that it's not actually where people have less and are worried about what they're going to eat tomorrow and where they're going to live and all those kinds of things. It's actually in places where there is some economic prosperity that anxiety starts to rise. Now, I think this is particularly interesting because what that's telling us is that there is a connection between anxiety and more money instead of less money. And if you were here 2 weeks ago, that's exactly what we looked at that Jesus said when he said that the more stuff that we had, the more worried that we so often become. There's a connection between the more that we have, the more that we feel like we have to have. The more that we have, the more that we are responsible for, right? Because you don't have to be anxious about the things that you don't have anyway. What it's telling us is that we are more often anxious about the things we do have that we're afraid we could lose at a moment's notice. Our anxiety actually gets tied to and lives around some of the very things that we think are keeping us safe and secure. This is an odd connection, isn't it? It makes sense. You're hearing it, and it makes sense, and it adds up. But on the surface, it feels a little bit strange. It feels like maybe it shouldn't be that way. And here's the thing. It doesn't have to be that way. You see, our money is telling a story about our stress levels. I told you that last week, right? We talked about stress. Our money is telling a story about our stress levels. Our money is also telling a story about our insecurities. Because the things that we're insecure, we try to shore up with some of the things that we have. Our money is telling a story about our fears and our worries. But Jesus said, and we're going to go back to the very same conversation that we've been looking at that Jesus is having with his disciples the last 2 weeks. We're going to be in Luke 12 again. And Jesus is going to bring it home and tell us it just doesn't have to be this way. At the end of the day, money is not a bad thing. Let me be very clear. Let me say that again. Money is not a bad thing. In fact, your stuff is not a bad thing. If you've got a camel lamp, that's a bad thing. Get rid of it for the love, okay? Just get rid of it. But your stuff is not bad, and money isn't bad. But what Jesus was speaking into that is still so true for us today is that if we are not careful, we will tie our hearts to things like money and stuff. And there is a better place for your anxious heart. Let me say that again. Some of you walked in with a lot of it today. You can feel it sometimes. There is a better place for your anxious heart. And in the middle of this conversation about worrying about what we're going to eat and what we're going to drink and what we're going to wear, and Jesus kept reminding them, you worry about these things and you really don't need to worry about these things. People who don't believe in a good God, right? We talked about that last week, and we just sang about it. People who don't believe in a good God, who believe in pagan, vindictive, need things from you gods. They run after all of the things that they think they need to put their hands on to have security in this world. But Jesus said, you have a better Father than that. You have a safer place to tie your security and your heart and your concerns. And so at the end of this conversation, Jesus looks at them, and I think he looks at us, and he says, lean in. I want to tell you a better way. And so this is the end of this story we've been reading as Luke tells it in chapter 12. It started out with two brothers in the crowd worrying about inheritance and whether it was going to be equal and who was going to get what and who was going to get that sweater and who was going to get the TV and the couch and who was going to get the stuff that was of greater value. And that kicked off this whole conversation where Jesus is going to say, you guys, you're worried about all these crazy things that you don't need to be worried about. And here at the end, he says, lean in. Do not be afraid, little flock. Now, that was actually funny. I have to be honest with you. In my preparation this week, in my research, I know that sometimes you notice we use different translations of Scripture. Sometimes it's NIV, sometimes it's NLT, sometimes I use the paraphrase, the Message. There's lots of great things out there. I actually got to this part where Jesus said, do not be afraid, little flock. And I thought, surely there has to be a better translation of that, or a translation that's going to sound less ridiculous than Jesus looking at everybody and calling us a little flock, right? Do y'all enjoy being the little flock? Or did you hear that and you're like, okay, Jesus, go talk to the littles hallway about being a little flock, or go talk to the geese about being a little flock. I don't care, but we are grown adults. We got our acts together. Don't treat us, don't talk to us like we don't know what we're doing. But I love this because it actually stayed consistent across all these translations, which was a good reminder to me that I don't get to pick what Jesus said. In case any of y'all needed that reminder too, just want you to know your pastor's being held accountable. I don't get to pick what Jesus said, but I do get to pay attention to what Jesus said. And I think that it was on purpose that at this moment, he was like, little dear ones, I'm about to tell you something, And I just need you to know that I love you so much that I don't want you to get this wrong. You're growing. You're figuring things out. You are this little flock, and you are worried, and you are anxious. And when Jesus uses that word, it's like he looks at us. He says, I know the things you're worried about. I know that you're concerned about the wolves. I know that you're concerned about the dangers that feel like they're too close. But little flock, come here. Do not be afraid. For your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. We just sang it. We just sang it. You're good. You are good. And even as we sang it, for some of you, I know that's a cry of desperation, of wanting to believe it's true, needing to believe it's true, trying to figure out if it could be true for you. But this is where Jesus has everybody, and he says, I'm going to come to this earth because I need to talk to you, and I need you to see me, and I need you to touch me, and I need you to hear from me in this moment before I lay down my life for you, that your Father is pleased and wants to give you the kingdom. The kingdom of God, which is every good and perfect thing as God intended it to be before our sin got in the way and messed everything up. Our Father is still fighting for our hearts. He is fighting on behalf of the meek and the scared and the vulnerable. And there's Jesus in person, and he's saying, come here, y'all. Come here. I want you to feel how true this is. Touch my hands. Touch my hands. Your Father is moving everything to give you his kingdom because it pleases him, because he wants to do it, because he loves you. And so, you need to sell your possessions, and you need to give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that aren't going to wear out. A treasure in heaven stands. No anything can come near, and no moth will destroy. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Okay, here it is. In other words, Jesus is saying, y'all, money's not bad. Your stuff's not bad. I said this last week, right? Our Heavenly Father's that knows that we need to eat and sleep indoors. And he's saying this is good, and this is think that is up to us, and it is on us. And we start to spend all of our time and all of our days spinning our wheels and chasing after the wind, toiling to get as much as we can, and then hold on to it for dear life in case we lose it. And Jesus shows up and he says the problem isn't the stuff, it's the fact that you're holding on to it like it is your treasure, and I have a better treasure to give you. Your good Father has a better treasure to give you. You are connecting your heart to something that is temporary, and I want you to connect your heart to something that is eternal. Jesus says, little flock, you who are dearly loved and cared for, lean in. Because there's a better place to trust your heart. See, Jesus' response to the worry and to the material needs of our lives becomes very counterintuitive. So counterintuitive in a way that it makes us want to roll our eyes and we're like, yeah, here it comes. This is what they're supposed to tell us. This is what we've been hearing. Some of you, this is why you've always even been scared of church, because here's where Jesus goes in this moment. We're all for the grace. We're all for the love. We're all for the tell us more about how good our Father is. And then Jesus said, let's make it practical now, and let's talk about your stuff and how it's getting in the way. He says, I'm going to need you to spend less and have less, and I'm going to need you to give more. And a bunch of anxious people who were sitting around, they're going, no, 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 no. You were supposed to give us more that we could keep along with the rest because we're building. What is it they said? Instead of hoarders, they liked the word, I don't even remember what it was, but visionary keepers of all of the things, right? We are collectors of all the good things. And so many times, this is how we treat our faith, and this is how we treat our lives, is we're like, yeah. We want to hear more about Jesus. We want to continue on this faith journey. We want to have this conversation. We just want to add it to all of the other things. And Jesus said, you're going to need to make some space. You're going to need to learn to stop trusting and leaning on some of the things that you've been leaning on, so that you can piece by piece start giving me more of your heart, more room for the kingdom. And so Jesus gets really practical, and he says, you're going to need to spend less, and you're going to need to give more. And the funny thing is, I've been talking a lot about this science and these studies and all of these things we understand, is that Jesus is saying this a few thousand years ago. Jesus is sitting with a group of people who lived in ways that can seem very different from how we live our lives today in an industrial, digital age. Jesus is sitting there talking to fishers and farmers, and he's having what feels like it should be a very different conversation, only Jesus was saying to them then what modern science is now pointing to and saying to us today. This is what I love about science and faith. Y'all, I think science just continues to point us to who God is. And modern science is telling us today that targeted generosity done on purpose and for a purpose, actually works and acts to counteract anxiety. Did you know that? Look it up on Google. Google knows everything, okay? Right? You should look some of this up. Don't just believe me, all right? I did the work, but you do it too. But what we're learning as modern science catches up is that what Jesus was talking about from a faith standpoint is actually incredibly true from a practical place. And the reason there's a connection is because it all comes back to what Jesus made very clear that day, is it's all a connection of where is your heart busy. And our hearts can get really busy, and they can pound really, really fast as we get anxious, right? We get anxious, our hearts start to pound. Y'all, I was at a U8 soccer game yesterday, and it was 1-1 in the fourth quarter, right? And I know it's U8, but it's real, okay? And so there we are on the sideline, and it's the last quarter, and it's 1-1. And this is just a small example, obviously. But with that, there's the energy and the anxiety and the levels that just start to rise in us, and our hearts start to beat faster as we get more excited and more engaged. And now on things that matter a lot more than U8 soccer, the same thing happens. We could do a whole sermon series on youth sports, not today, okay? But the same thing happens with these big things in our lives, is the more our anxiety increases, our hearts get really busy trying to keep up with it, and they beat, and they beat, and they beat. And Jesus said there's actually a better way to engage your heart, because your heart is always going to be directly connected to the things that you give. See, every time we give, every time we're generous people, every time we do something for someone else, right? Generosity. When we do something, when we give out of our extra, and when we give out of our not extra to someone else, our hearts actually get really busy. Our hearts actually get really engaged and drawn in to the story of what is happening in this exchange. And you see, what happens is our hearts can be busy this way, or they can be busy this way. This is why so many times, even in counseling offices and places like that, they'll tell you one of the best things you can do when you're working through some of your issues is find a way to also engage and help somebody else, right? If you can help somebody else, it starts to occupy more and more pieces that are drawn up. Now, again, there's some real things that need to be worked through on the other side of this, but there's this very practical, let's just piece by piece start engaging the parts of you that are wrapped up in anxiety in other places. Let's find a better way to deal with your heart. And Jesus said it's going to be over here doing for somebody else. And so here's the way it works out very practically, is that having more stuff leads to more worry. But the opposite is that not having less, the opposite of having more is giving more, which over time makes us less afraid and less anxious. And so to put it differently, the invitation that is out there for us is that we could start trading our stuff for stories. We could trade our stuff for stories, right? 2 weeks ago, I challenged you to give away 100 things. And then some of you kept going, and we gave away 100 things and 200 things. And then, we had this family in the middle of that came along from the Bahamas, and it was awesome because some of you were already in the middle of cleaning out your closets. And so there was a direct translation that happened there. And some of it just felt good, right? Because you started to give away things, and you'd been meaning to clean out for a while. And it helped that the preacher finally told the other people living in your house that they should get on board. And so then everybody got to go home together, and maybe it only lasted for a day, but you started to clean some things out. You started to do a little bit of simplification. Some of you maybe got rid of a storage center because you realized you'd just been moving the stuff to bigger places for more stuff. And so we started with this whole idea of we just need to get rid of the stuff. But today I want to tell you that we don't just clear out the stuff to make more space. There is something that happens because if we just clear out the stuff to make more space, then over time, we clear out the stuff and then we just bit by bit replace it with more stuff. Right? It was great that we cleared out 100 things last week, but then we just brought more stuff into the house. Right? Like every day, I send papers back in my kids' folder, and they just multiply. It's the loaves and fishes happening at school, right? They just multiply and come back home. Teachers are like, we know, right? We know. And so this thing happens where if it's just about clearing the stuff, then it's always going to be a never-ending cycle. But Jesus gets us close here at the end, and he says, I don't want you to just get rid of the stuff. I don't want you to just clear out and sell your possessions. I want you to take that same space that was being occupied in your life, and I want you to use it differently, and I want you to tell a better story. I want you to replace your stuff with your stories, because we all know this to be true. At the end of our lives, when someone stands up at your funeral and mine, they are not going to give an account of the things that you own. They're not going to talk about your boat and your house and your cars and your computers and your phones. They're going to talk about the stories that you lived. And some of them maybe were on your boat. I'm not anti-boat. I am pro-boat, okay? But we're going to tell the stories instead of the stuff. And I think that what we don't want to do is wait until that point of our life and say, is there a story to tell? The invitation right now for all of us is, can we make a conscious decision in our everyday lives that we would rather have stories than stuff? And y'all, these are the good stories. We're coming up on 10 years as Ashley Ridge Church. And I've been telling y'all we're getting ready for a big celebration in January. We've just seen God do amazing things, and we believe that amazing things are still to come. And so as we've been going back and looking through our history, y'all, it's the same thing that's already happening. what's coming to the surface isn't the stuff, y'all. And there's been a lot of stuff through the years. Some of you have been around for a long time. How the lobby looks now is not how the lobby used to look. We didn't used to have a wall up front that said, welcome home. And then the other stuff got broken down and we got new stuff. And there's been different ways that we've done stuff. But y'all, as I look back, there are just some amazing stories that rise to the surface. And one of them is that it was one of the very early, I think it was the very first year when we started to do change for $1. And if you're new to Ashley Ridge or you haven't been around for a while, maybe you've seen these silver buckets that say change for $1 that we have sitting out everywhere. That's not so you can make change for $1 and get something from the vending machine, all right? But if you do, get gummy worms and share them with me. But they're sitting there, not to make change, but because years and years and years ago, we heard this idea that a church out in Portland, Oregon was doing, and it was called Change for $1. And the idea was that every week, everybody who was there would give $1, no more, no less, and they would use it to meet a tangible need in the community. And they were doing lots of outreach above and beyond, and we've always done lots of outreach above and beyond, but this was going to be separate and apart. It was meant to be $1. They didn't want anybody to give more, but it was this idea of, can we see how God can take just the little that we all have and use it together to do something that can show someone in our community week after week that God is paying attention to their anxious heart and to their need that they have. And if you've never checked it out, we have a blog that Marty Thomas has just done an amazing job keeping through the years that tells the stories of all the things that have happened because of Change for $1. And I could stand up here all day telling these stories, but as I was thinking about it, my head went back to one that was really early on. We got a phone call or an email, I don't remember, but it was telling us how there was a teacher in our school district who's also a single mother with 4 kids, and she went to go to school that day, and her car wouldn't start. And so she had a dead car, and she had no idea what she was going to do. And the person sent in this change for $1 message. And at that point in time, we were even a smaller church, and so change for $1. You know, we didn't get a lot of money in change for $1 every week. And I remember getting the request and thinking, you know, this money has paid for a lot of light bills, and it's paid for some air conditioners and trailers and those kind of things. But I don't know how this money fixes a car. But then we thought to ourselves, you know, that was exactly part of why we're doing this, is to see what can God do when we give a little and He does more. And so we started making some calls and following up with some connections, and we knew some people that were connected to Stokes Honda because of the Summerville Miracle League and how involved they were there. And so we called them and said, you know, is there anything you could do to maybe help? We're trying to figure out how to help this mom and a car, and she needs to be able to get to school and all these kind of things. And they're like, we can't make any promises, but if you can get the car here, we'll see what we can do. And so we thought, all right, that's it. We have enough money in our change for $1. We've got dollars. We can use our dollars to tow this car from where it is down to Stokes Honda. And then we'll just see what happens from there. And so the tow truck people got there, and, you know, they played with the car, and sure enough confirmed the fact that, you know, this car was not starting. It was not happening. It was not just a battery. It was not just out of gas. This car was just deader than dirt, and it wasn't going to go anywhere. And so they attached it to the thing, and they took it down to Stokes Honda. And y'all, I am not kidding you. This is not a preacher story. I'm not making it up, but they took it off the truck at Stokes Honda into their shop. They got it up on the lift, and there was nothing wrong with the car. And they brought the car back off the lift, and they drove the car around. And sure enough, the car was working. Y'all have no idea what happened to that car. I have no idea why it worked then and why it didn't work before. Stokes Honda has no idea why it worked then and why it didn't work before. But what I know is that we trusted God with just a little bit, and He said, here you go. Here you go. Just give me a little room to show you how good I am. Just give me a little bit of space to show you what I can do. And then 2 weeks ago, we told you there was a family from the Bahamas. And if you do go, definitely text that number. If you didn't see the story that Live 5 News did this week when they put it out there. But this family, the mom is Sylvia and her 2 kids. They lost everything in Dorian, everything. And so they were at one of the relief centers. And some people came and they were like, hey, we've got room on this plane. We can take you and your family to Charleston, South Carolina and help you resettle there. Would you be willing to go? Would you be interested to go? And this woman who had lost everything and had nothing to lose stood up and she said, me and my kids, we will go. And so they left behind not really everything they had because they didn't have anything left, but everything they knew. And they got on a plane and they landed in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And they've been living with a family, but y'all, last week, we were able to Lee drove out there with the kitchen supplies and the clothes, and y'all have been sending us pictures of furniture because not only are they getting settled, but she's already been offered a job, and they're looking for an apartment so they can move out of this family's house, and they need everything. And this mom, you should just see her smile in the story. She's like, it's just amazing how everything has been provided. And y'all, these are the stories that we want to be able to tell. These are the stories that give us life. I could stand up here all day and telling you stories about sustenance farms and homes we built for orphans in Rwanda. But 5 years ago around this time, we also started talking about this crazy dream of a food truck. And we shared it with you at the beginning of December. In the midst of doing all the things that everybody was doing for Christmas. In the midst of a time of year that's about generosity, but it's also about anxiety. And we offered this idea as maybe there's something bigger we could do together. And what was so cool about that, and what I remember, is that above and beyond, y'all just showed up. And what we were able to do in January of that next year was go out and find an old coffee truck, and we paid cash to buy it. And now every single week, that truck drives out into the community, and we get to intersect with people's lives and people's stories. I met a family at the food truck 2 weeks ago. It was pouring that Saturday afternoon. It was absolutely pouring. Megan, if you're out there, she came with her son Graham that day. It was her first time on the truck. She got soaked, y'all. She volunteered to be the one on the outside of the window, helping to coordinate the meals and how many everybody needed as they went. She just got absolutely drenched on the outside of that truck. But in the pouring down rain, y'all, families were coming, and they kept showing up. And there was one family I met that night, a mom and a dad, and they had their little boy with them, and they had a shopping cart of some of their things. And they were just enjoying the rain. And they just kept waiting, and they kept telling everybody else they could go in front of them, they could go in front of them. They weren't in any kind of hurry. They were happy to wait. And so I went out and I stood with them, and I was talking to their little guy, and I was having a conversation with her. And the mom finally said to me, she said, do you know that the biggest thing I was worried about today was the fact that all 3 of us really needed a shower? And she just stood there in the rain. They had already taken their shoes off because they were soaked. And her husband was laughing as he lifted up his feet. And he said, all clean. Look what God does. Because our Heavenly Father knows what we need. But man, the stories that we could tell, if we just opened ourselves up to say, less of the stuff, more of these stories. And so here's what I know to be true, and this is an Andy Stanleyism. I don't own this, but he said this years ago, and I've always found this to be true. He said, you always miss the money that you spend, and especially the money that you waste, but you never miss the money that you give. And y'all, I just think that's so true, and I think a lot of us could tell those stories. There's money that we have wasted, that we have gone, man, I could use that money now. But there's never been a single time and think, I really wish I had that money still. And it's all about these places that we're going to put our hearts. And y'all, I know that in talking about this, I know that I'm the pastor of this church, and we invite y'all to give, and we talk about giving around here. And I'm sure some of you have maybe had a bad history with that at churches, and you're thinking, here we go. This is all a big lead up to y'all should give more. And here's the thing I do, and I want you to give to Ashley Ridge Church because I believe with everything in me that the local church is still the greatest movement for good in our world today. I believe that. I believe that, and I believe that with all the mistakes the church has made throughout time, you can still go back and look, and the church has remained on the leading edge above and beyond anything else on people out there who are providing hospitals, medical care, food, shelter, basic needs, unapologetically, just so that I don't not say it and that you don't have to be confused about it. I would love to invite you to give at Ashley Ridge Church. I just told you just a couple stories of what I think that we've seen God do here. I would love for you to give to Ashley Ridge. I would love for you to be a part of this movement that is doing incredible things in this community because we're for this community in some very real ways. God has tied our hearts here. But y'all, if that's not where you are, and if that's not what you see yet, if that's a faith journey that you're still on, then I also want you to hear me say today that Jesus was talking about a really big picture that's a whole lot bigger than this one local church. And so if you just need to be generous somewhere, then I want to invite you and ask you to be generous somewhere. Because it's how we get to see that God can start to take the pieces of our heart and tie them to what matters so much more than our stuff. And so here's the thing. I want to end with this, and I know I'm already over time. Y'all are being gracious, but I want to tell you this last story. And it's a story that Jesus told about money. And it's when it got really uncomfortable and people didn't like the fact that he was walking around and telling people that they should give more and they should spend less. And they were like, we're over you. Let's hang you on a cross. Don't do that, by the way. But they were getting to a point where they were trying to trap him. They were trying to trip him up because he was getting really personal with their lives. And so one day, there was a group of people, and it was both the Pharisees and the Herodians. And so they were a group of people who were walking that line between the law of the church and the law of the land that was Rome at the time. And they thought, we know a way we can get him. And so they pulled out the coins in their pocket. And they took their coins to Jesus, and they said, Jesus, we want to know what you think we should do about paying the imperial tax. And Matthew and Mark both tell this story, and they tell it in the exact same way of what it looked like that day. They said, we want to know what you think. And the imperial tax was a special tax that was only for people who weren't Roman citizens. So this was an oppressive tax. This was an above and beyond. If you're a person of privilege and you're a Roman citizen, you don't have to pay this. But if you're someone who we could take all of your stuff at any time, we just want to prove it to you. And so here's this imperial tax that we're going to levy and that you're going to pay back. And so they came to Jesus and they're like, this is going to trap him. It's either going to get him in trouble with Rome or it's going to get him in trouble with his own people. But either way, we're going to mess him up on the subject of money. And so they brought these coins and they brought them to Jesus and they said, what do you think we ought to do about paying this tax? And at first, Jesus just shook his head at them. And he's like, you guys are just trying to trap me. He wasn't fooled. He wasn't playing their game. He said, you guys are hypocrites. You're just trying to mess around with this. But he said, but I'll play. I'll play in your sandbox today. He said, pull out that coin. Whose image is on that coin? And they looked at the image and they said, the image on our coin is of Caesar. And Jesus said, then that's great. Then you give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And you give to God what is God's. And in the moment, they were just really frustrated that Jesus had come up with one more clever answer, and they thought, that didn't work out like we thought that it was going to work out. there was Jesus with the clever play. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and you're going to give to God what is God's. In other words, don't get your heart, don't get yourself all tied up and worried about this piece that has somebody else's picture on it. Now, here's what I love about this story. Ravi Zacharias, who's an incredible Bible preacher, he takes it one step further. And I heard him say this years ago. I just think it's amazing. He said, I really believe that Jesus stuck around with some other people after the ones trying to trip him up walked away. And after he had asked them whose image was on the coin, and they said Caesar's, he said, I really feel like Jesus looked at everyone that was left and said, now whose image is on you? Whose image is on you? Friends, we were made in the image of a very good God who loves us and whose desire, the pleasure of his heart, is to give us all that we could ever need, to give us good gifts. And the question for you and me is, what are we going to do with those gifts? We can worry about stuff, or we can practice wisdom. We can manage and stress, or we can create margin. We can have more stuff, or y'all, we can tell some incredible stories about the goodness of God with our lives. Jesus says, come here, little flock, don't be afraid. Tie your heart to the one who made it. It's safe with him. Tell that story. Let's pray. God, we don't know where to begin to count all the good gifts that you've given us, or to understand even what it is to live in your kingdom and to be able to tie our hearts so completely there. But God, we're here today and we want to see more. We want to see more of how your kingdom is different. We want to see more of how you can use us in bigger ways beyond ourselves. And so God, we're going to keep testing and trying. We're going to keep opening up a little bit more of us to trust a whole lot more of you and see what you can do that is so much bigger than any one of us. God, we pray that you would make us opportunities and to show up in the places where we can show up. Because God, we do believe that you're good, and we thank you that you're good. We thank you that you know the anxieties. You know the fears, you know the worries, you know the things weighing on us today. God, help us to give those things back to you. Help us to just give our hearts and our security a little more to you. And then help us to see as you show us that we're good in that space because you love us and you're for us. Jesus, you're so good. You're so good. Thank you for walking with us every day, and it's in your great name that we pray. Amen. Y'all, we're going to sing one more song, Come to the Altar. And if you'd like to pray with someone during this song, then there's going to be prayer teams on either side of the room. If you want to go ahead and respond and give an offering or put your dollar in one of those buckets as an act of worship, knowing that God's going to do something more with all of us, then you can do that now or you can do that later. But y'all, just a couple more minutes. Let's put our hearts here and let's look up to the Father and trust him in this space.
Are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Savior, isn't he wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. And bow down before him, for he is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't he wonderful? Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Bow down before him, for he is Lord of all. Sing hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. Bear your cross as you wait for the crown. Tell the world of the treasure you found. Jesus is calling.
And I love that because that's the invitation. Jesus said you can trust a whole lot of things. You can trust a whole lot of things, but I really want you to know that there's only one. There's only one who's going to lay down his life for you because he wants to give us good things. Your heart is safe there. Jesus said, let's tie our treasure together. Let's tie your treasure to the one who created you from the start in his image. And together we get to tell the whole world a story of hope, of grace, and of possibility. It's so much fun to do that together. Y'all, next Sunday, we're starting a new series called Fight For It. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to be celebrating communion together next week. I love that we get to do this Sunday after Sunday. We'll see you back in this space and all through the week online.
Is all